morning, ladies and gentlemen, or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at, listening to us across the world. My name is Taryell Simmons, and I'm a host of Rise Every Nation. And I got a special guest in the building today, Mr. Kamm Howard. How are you today? Good. I'm assuming it's morning where you're at. Where you joining us from?
It is morning. I'm joining you from Chicago, and I'm having a great morning. Thank you.
All right, Chi-Town. And for those of you who are getting the visual experience, man, Kamm has got this cloth. The cloth, he's representing. Tell us about this outfit, because I feel like it has a story on all by itself.
Well, the cloth actually came from Ghana. I was in Ghana at a conference for reparations and healing, an African conference. Really, it was a global conference bringing reparations activists from around the world to Ghana. And I got a chance to do a little shopping, brother. And so as I went around, I found some material that I liked, and I brought it back to my tailor here in Chicago and had him hook me up.
I love it. I love it. And because I'm from Nigerian descent. And so like when my dad goes back home, he brings cloth back.
Okay.
And you have to make sure you find the right tailor, because like us Nigerians, we're very particular. There's like, don't waste my cloth, or like if you're going to do something, do it good.
Right. I had that problem before as well. Well, I brought some cloth and the tailor just didn't know what he was doing.
So you said a mouthful right there, reparations conference, and we're going to unpack that in just a little bit. But let's start here, because that's where I like to start with my guest. For those who don't know Kamm, who is Kamm Howard? And I know that's a loaded question. You can take that as far and deep, as wide as you want to go.
Right. So I'm a brother of history. I'm a brother of the historical journey of people of Africans in this country, Black people in this country. We have a long and arduous and wonderful and, challenging history. And I'm a product of that, man, from the product of, enslaved foreparents to, mothers and fathers and grandparents who attempted to rise up from the challenges that they face, and instilled in me a same desire, just to rise up, man, and be someone in this world and try to contribute. So I'm a product of that history. I am a community organizer in the reparations movement. I'm an investor in real estate, own several apartments and retail spaces for Black-owned businesses to operate out of. I'm just someone who's trying to give to the community, take care of my family. I'm a family man, and my grandchildren, my children, and contribute to the upward mobility of our people.
I love it. I love it. Now, were you always in the reparations movement? Like, did this was like how did you get into it? Like, because I don't know too many people that say, you know what, after high school, I'm gonna go into the reparations movement. like that's not something that we as a conversation piece for the dinner table of like what you gonna do when you grow up. So how did you get into this thing? And then tell, for those who probably may not be as inclined, to tell us a little bit about the reparations movement.
Sure, I got in the movement. It was well after high school. I've been in the movement about 16 years. I had read probably 10 years before I even joined the movement. I first came across the term reparations in a book by Dr. Maulana Karinga. And I was fascinated by it, and there was also an organization that he had listed in that book called NCOBRA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. And I, stored that in my consciousness. And after I had some success in business, I was introduced to a brother was sharing with me that there was a meeting of this organization that was being held that night. And so I went to the meeting, heard what they were saying, and actually joined the meeting. And I was looking for something to do with my time and resources in the movement. I wanted to do something around health because I was health conscious, and I know that we're have a high propensity for disease and mental health challenges in this country. But when
Mm-hmm.
I looked at reparations deal with health, it deal with economics, it deal with family, it deals with criminal justice, it deals with all the ranges of challenges that we face. And so instead of
Yeah.
pigeonholing myself into one area, I thought I would fight to get resources from this country that owed us uh,
Mm-hmm.
to apply to all of these areas of challenge, not just one that I was really looking forward to joining at the time, which was health. Reparations
Mm-hmm.
is a redress for crimes that were committed, the debt that is owed. This country has
Mm-hmm.
committed a tremendous amount of crimes against Black people. In 2001, there was a World Conference Against Racism that, global conference from the international community said that the transatlantic slave trade was a crime against humanity. Slavery were
Mm-hmm.
crimes against humanity. Colonialism, crimes against humanity. Apartheid, crimes against humanity. And that these
Mm-hmm.
crimes there's an obligation for those who committed the crimes to pay reparations. And so, that's where we're at. We're working feverishly to get the
Mm-hmm.
federal government to engage in redress. And right now, there are nearly hundreds of
Mm-hmm.
local entities, cities, and municipalities, a few states that are looking to join in this discussion.
Nah, I love it. I love it. Now, it sounds like most of your work is involved with, the U.S. side of it. Is there like a global one that looks at, all the crimes that's been done against
Yeah.
Africa from France, the UK, and all the other nations that chopped Africa up and then decide to split it.
Yeah,
Where
absolutely, absolutely. It's electric. Here in America, the activity is electric, but it's also electric globally. In the Caribbean,
Mhm.
um, probably 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, the Caribbean nation of states created the CARICOM Reparations Commission that would really
Mhm.
target the European governments, France, Britain, Netherlands, Germany, not so much Germany, but um, Spain and Portugal, countries that have historically um, engaged in these crimes in the Caribbean. And they put forth a list of demands, a 10-point platform to these
Mhm.
governments. In America, the National African American Reparations Commission patterned themselves after the CARICOM Reparations Commission or the Caribbean Reparations Commission, and also put together a 10-point platform. And as you said, as I said it earlier, I was at a global conference on reparations, where not only Caribbean brothers and sisters there, American brothers and sisters, but brothers and sisters from the continent, brothers and sisters from Europe, and there's so much happening in the movement. In July of last year, the conference was in August, but in July of last year, I led a team to the Vatican where we delivered a
Mhm.
presentment to the church, because it was a church that inaugurated the transatlantic slave trade. It ordered
Really?
yes, it ordered through what they call papal bulls, these official edicts from the Pope. It ordered the Portuguese government to go into Africa to plunder, rob, steal, and then commit their progeny to perpetual enslavement. That is what the church ordered. And from that, you have the 600 years of destruction against African life that we're facing today, that we're still being uh, affected by today. And so we presented
Mhm.
a document to the church laying out their crimes that they committed, laying out how it continues to impact us all around the world. Black people on the bottom of every good list in the good list, and on the top of every bad list. When you look at African countries, and you look at the development index among countries, about 70% of African countries are at the very bottom, and 85% of European countries are at the very top. And so that dichotomy is a result of what the church inaugurated. And so we are working to have the church respond.
Mm. Man, like I didn't even know that because in my mind, I'm thinking like, man, we got so many black people who are just like faithful Christians. Like, I wonder if this news was made readily available, like how would that change the relationship with church if church is not willing to atone for its sins, right?
Right. So yeah, more and more people are becoming aware of it, and more churches are getting involved. The World Council of Churches are getting involved. The Anglican Church in England, which was a split from the Catholic Church, just committed, $100 million to looking at some stuff around reparations. So, like I say, the movement is electric. There's so much happening. And these spiritual communities are getting involved. The Jewish Reform Movement, which is the largest Jewish movement in America, has also signed on to the Black reparations struggle. So, yes, a lot going on in the religious institutions. And I think more and more Black people will demand that their parent institutions actually engage in some forms of redress the more they know about it. So that's, part of the education that we're doing.
Right. So yeah, I think one part is education. Now, in that education, like, what is the path forward for a lot of these institutions, whether it be the church, whether it be the government? Because I think that's where we get stuck on, like, what's the path forward, right? I think we all, after George Floyd, realized that there's a problem now. Nobody can hide that there's a problem now. Like, you all seen it firsthand now. And if you did it, you're living under a rock somewhere. So, like, what is the path forward?
The path forward is directing resources. Resources have to come into our community. That's what reparations is about. It's about resources. And it can be applied in a whole lot of different ways. So, some churches are, actually putting a fund together for the community to put together an organization to administer those funds. Some churches are, making their spaces available for the community to engage in things. Some churches are engaging in truth and reconciliation. So there's a lot of ways that it can work, but the main focus is path forward is that everybody works collectively to get the federal government to engage in the type of redress that's necessary. They have the resources. They were the major player and benefactor of the crimes, the stolen labor of African people, the destruction of African communities in life. The federal government has benefited the most. Many corporations have benefited, institutions have benefited. All of these have to be brought to justice. However, we must collectively focus on the federal government. And there's a lot going on in that area right now. And so the major thrust...
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
The major thrust right now is to have President Biden enact a reparations commission. There is a reparations commission law in Congress. However, we know now with the Democratic Congress, with the Democratic Party, I should say, no longer in control of the House, and the Senate control is very minimum and definitely would not get a law passed in the Senate. So there's no effort forward in the Congress. There's no path forward in the Congress. The only path forward at this time is through a presidential executive order. And that's what we're working on. Biden, the Democratic Party, has benefited tremendously from the Black vote. And, one of the things, as you were saying, you didn't know about the church's role. Another hidden fact most Black people do not know is that it was the Black vote that pretty much gave this country every Democratic president since the 1960s. Since 1960, with the exception of LBJ. There would not have been a President Kennedy. There would not have been a President Carter. Clinton would not have won twice. Obama would not have won twice. And Biden would not have won. The Republican Party has won the majority of the white vote since 1960 in this country. And if it was just a contest between whites only, there would have only been one Democratic president during that time, and that would have been Lyndon Baines Johnson. Even in some instances, most instances, with the exception of one, if you take away the Hispanic and the Asian vote and just include Black and white vote, the Democratic candidate still wins. But if you take away the Black vote and just include the Asian and the Hispanic vote and others, the Democratic candidate loses. they only win with the black vote if they're going to win, and they have to overcome whatever that difference is in white votes. If the difference is too great, our vote is not going to matter. But if the
Mm-hmm.
difference is um, in the 40, 44, 40, 44, 56 range, something like that, we can overcome that. And so if you have a Democratic challenger who's, someone who uh, can win a great deal of not in the majority of the white vote, but at least be competitive, then our vote is what actually turns the corner for them and puts that Democratic candidate in office. And we're not getting what we deserve for that power.
Mm. I'm thinking of an interview I just did like a couple of weeks ago with my brother Aaron Johnson, who is about the holistic resistance, and he's
Mm-hmm.
like, you got to be fit like us as black people. We have to be efficient with our resistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
To demand change, and what that means is like when you're being efficient with your resistance, like you slap oppression one way, and then when you're coming back on the back end, you slap it another way.
Right.
And I'm up here thinking like, man, how can we work both sides? Like, how can we work the side of the you know getting in the president's ear, but also what you were saying with the collective, like it's going to take a collective, and how do we unite as a collective to also change the house as well? Like, is there a way for us to do both at the same time so we're efficient in our resistance?
Sure. In the House, we've put, about 50 plus congresspersons in Congress, in the House. One of the challenges is that they're not using their numbers as a block. You get more if you have used it as a block. They have the Congressional Black Caucus, but the Congressional Black Caucus is not moving as a block, as like those 20 or so Republicans that blocked the speaker from being voted into power during the start of this Congress. They moved as a block, and they were able to get a tremendous amount of uh, compromise as well as promises made to them by holding themselves steadfast in unity. And so that's something we have to demand out of out of the congresspersons that we put there. Certainly we can put more there, that's fine, but we have 50% is, a quarter of the Democratic, quarter of the votes necessary to pass any legislation. That's a tremendous amount of power if utilized. Our elected officials are simply trying to utilize influence as opposed to utilizing force, which we have the power to
Mm-hmm.
do. And so that's another educational component. We have to demand more of these elected officials that we put in office.
Mm. Another thing I'm thinking about too is, uh, I don't remember who said this, but somebody said you can't use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house, right?
Right.
And um, like, is there a third way that we could possibly do it that doesn't use the same system? That because I feel like our country right now is so divided. Our government is so divided. They can't even get things done.
Right.
Simple things, right? And so these more complex things, uh, can we put all our eggs in one basket and have faith that it will
Sure.
get done through that same system?
Sure. So, there's efforts on the international level to utilize the international instruments that are available to us. We are, according to international law, a national minority in this country. And when the 13th Amendment, when they ended enslavement, they instituted the 13th Amendment, which made us citizens. We didn't ask to be citizens. They made us citizens. They didn't give us our right at that particular time to determine whether or not we wanted to remain in this country as a whole, whether we wanted to remain in this country as a separate body, separate governing body, or we wanted to remain in this country within the confines of the American system. that was not, and that was our right to have that, to make that choice. That choice was taken away from us, and it was imposed. Citizenship was imposed upon us, and we've never benefited from citizenship in this country. We've never have been able to exercise full citizenship. Like someone who comes over here from Europe and become a citizen tomorrow, they have more justice and opportunity and citizenship um, value than we do, and we've been here for hundreds of years. And so you impose citizenship on us, you're denying full citizenship to us, and so we have a right as national minorities to demand self-determination and to determine what that looks like for us. A lot of people are not aware of international law. They're not aware of these particular rights and how we can strip ourselves from this confinement within the U.S. government system. And then once you do so, the government that you're there in is mandated to, out of their tax revenue, submit or commit a portion to your government. And so, that's something that we can do as well. So there's a petition that's being put forth now in the Permanent Forum of People of African Descent that they want to take to the UN, to the International Criminal Court, actually, International Court of Justice, to say that this citizenship was imposed upon us and that we should have a right to have a plebiscite in this country. A plebiscite is a national vote to determine if some of us wants to stay, some of us wants to go, some of us want our own geopolitical entity, that we should have that vote and we should have that right. And so that's something that, we utilize international instruments, because even though the European world in many instances dominate these international instruments, they are informed by non-white lawyers and human rights defenders as well. And so when you come to America, you have this white nationalist dominance that we have a difficult time challenging. That's what you say, utilizing the master's tools. Those white nationalist tools will not allow us to do the work of dismantling or building, not even dismantling, even building. It's not allowing us to even build. Every time we build, this white nationalist structure strips from us. And so we have to go outside of that. And that's why we're utilizing the international instruments to which the United States is a signature of these agreements. And if they weren't a signature of these agreements, then we would, we still have no real ability to challenge. But because they are signature to these agreements, and because what they do in America affects their geopolitical relations around the world, they cannot hold themselves above the agreements that they've entered into. And so they try to, and sometimes they do, many times they do. But the more we push, the more we fight, then we can begin to see ourselves weakening that power to resist, change, massive change, substantial change. No one thought that over 100 cities will be talking about reparations in this country today. Mm-hmm. And so, we have to continue to fight and utilize every mechanism that's available to us.
Yeah, because and you're right. I never thought in my lifetime that we'd be talking about reparations and people actually looking to place it in government. But if that goes through, that would create some systemic change too, because they're like systematically, how do you start to impose and build and restructure government to,
that's right,
in a way that allows for this new form of culture and system that has never been done before in a white nationalist structure, as you would say. So like that would systematically change some things. Me trying to play that out in my head of like, ooh, this one, that means this one has to change and this one has to change. We might, that might break some things systematically.
Most definitely, most definitely.
And allow for people to rebuild. Now I'm curious about going back to what you were saying. So if I'm, if, and let me know if I'm not understanding it correctly. So could I, Taryell, as an individual, say, you know what, I didn't, my parents, I, and so forth, did not have the opportunity to choose citizenship. So now I want to invoke this thing that you're talking about, and I want to start anew here, to start my own community, and then the government will have to give me money as because I'm revoking my citizenship and I'm enacting some new form of way of being.
Yeah, so that's something that some groups are doing, like the Moorish Americans and these other groups that are indigenous, African indigenous groups here in America are attempting to do. Many of them have already established their citizenship, their nationalities, their nations. However, they have not compelled the federal government to act in regards to resources. Most people don't know that there are over 235 or 40 indigenous Native American nations within America, not just groups, but nations. So America is a multinational state that, you know, is projected as being this one nation, but you know there are many nations in America. The indigenous Americans, they have or the Native Americans, they have a office, Department of Interior. They have, you know, Claims Commission. They have various structures, trusts, governmental trusts that collects and distributes resources to those nations to operate however they choose. Those are things that we're trying to do with this plebiscite. It doesn't have to be just one, you know, African nation in this country or Black nation in this country. It could be possibly several. But the thing is, we have to have the vote. We have to be able to have an official national vote and be able to determine if there's a significant enough of us who want that reality. And if there is, then this government must target resources for us to figure out how that happens. And it may come out that is more than one independent Black nation in America. The same way, like I said, there's 400 independent Native American nations in this country.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that in my role in government, and I learned that there's, like, just in San Diego alone, there's about 17 sovereign nations, and then when the government works with these sovereign nations to, whether it's provide resources like health resources, policing, whatever it is, they have to work under the accordance of whatever that sovereign nation is, and then so they it's like a treaty. They negotiate together how you come in to work with them to provide those resources, and so that's why, like, if you're ever on a casino or Indian reservation, you are outside of the U.S. You are no longer in U.S. territory. So crimes committed there could be dealt with differently from
that's right.
Once you get off of that casino.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy, brother. What we're trying to get at. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The armed sovereign nations within this territory.
Yeah. Now, what do you think of the Back to Africa movement and the creation of Liberia?
Well, the Back to African movement, that there's two. There's the Back to Africa movement, and then there's the colonial movement, colonization movement. The colonization movement was started by whites to determine what they were going to do to Black people. Initially, during the British War against America, the American Revolution, the British said, we will set free anyone who helps us defeat these rebellions. When the British
Mm.
lost, they set up. They said they was going to set them free, but they couldn't set them free in a country that they lost to. So then they sent them to some up in Canada, British Canada, and some to Sierra Leone, and
Mm.
established the country of Sierra Leone. When the colonizers here in America, after they won, looked at that, they that was this colonial movement. They also wanted to determine what they could do with with blacks who they didn't really want us here, and so they started. They went and negotiated land in Liberia, began to send help some Africans, African Americans. Well, not they weren't even Americans, but at that time, but some enslaved Africans and their descendants go back to Liberia, and so that was established. That's how Liberia was established. Now, the Back to Africa movement was one where Paul Coffey was a big proponent, and of course Marcus Garvey, UNIA, were big proponents. What that movement was about was, we should separate. We can't live under this domination, and that we were taken from this country, and we should be able to go back with resources to rebuild. And because many of us didn't know where we came from, Marcus Garvey and others saw that there was this entity already established in Liberia, that we would use that as a base. And so Marcus Garvey began to negotiate with the Liberian government for land, began to send resources there, equipment, which will be in the number of millions of dollars worth of equipment there, began to set up a base to build a global African power center. And the American corporations, the Firestone Rubber Corporation, got wind of it, and they put pressure on the government along with the NAACP to indict Marcus Garvey on some bogus charges. And that was really the end of the official Back to Africa movement. But, there's never been a time in this country where some people did not want to go back home. That's my form of redress that I would love, is to get resources to find a place on the continent that I would like to live the rest of my life out. So the Back to Africa movement is not something that's dead. Minister Farrakhan, the Nation of Islam, has also always called for separation, sometimes to the continent of Africa, sometimes to the Caribbean. But there's been a healthy vein of separation in this country since we got here. And that's still alive. And most of that separation is targeted toward going back to the continent.
Yeah. I think the most recent one I heard was when what's his name? Famous musician
Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder.
Mhm.
Yeah, Stevie Wonder
Yeah.
went back home.
He went
Said it
back
was a
home.
beautiful experience.
Yeah. So,
and
there's been, my sisters are in the African Hebrew Israelite community. They left America under the Hebrew Israelites in the 1980s, and they've been living in Israel since that time. And you say Israel, but it was still they first went to Ghana for about 6 years before they went to Israel. But there's been several communities of expatriates, if you will, who went back to the continent and established communities. And so, again, that's still a healthy vein of desire for a lot of us.
Yeah, and I think like I've seen a couple people on social media do the movement back to Ghana. Ghana has opened up their doors to even have dual citizenship,
Exactly.
and they have, and it seems like they have this very healthy, beautiful, immersive experience back home to the motherland, and so maybe that's something that can be simply replicated.
Yeah, and it's being replicated all around the country. There's a brother by the name of Safiwe Baleka. He's a Balanta descendant, former Olympic swimmer, He's in his 50s now. Uh, he
Mm-hmm.
traced his lineage back to Guinea-Bissau or the Balanta people. And
Mm-hmm.
he has annual um, homecomings from people in America who also did their DNA and traced it to Guinea-Bissau or the Balanta people. I am also a Balanta descendant,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and went back on one of those journeys. And we're looking at dual citizenship in Guinea-Bissau. And
Mm-hmm.
he's contacted other groups who are also doing annual returns to the continent and also looking at dual citizenship. So there are about 15, 20 countries right now who are looking at this issue. And it's also being one that there will be a international conference in April in Zimbabwe with this whole issue of dual citizenship and what rights do we have, uh, the diaspora, that's not just Africans who left the continent, but the diaspora initially was those who were forcibly removed from the continent. And so,
Mm-hmm.
what rights do we have to the continent, the descendants whose
Mm-hmm.
ancestors were forcibly removed? And so, that's a big
Mm.
discussion that's being held in Zimbabwe in April. And I was thinking about going, but I probably will not. So much is going on in April.
Yeah. And when you talk about this, one thing that I think of too, when of our people that are here in the U.S. especially, a lot of us don't know where like where we came from. A
Right,
lot of us don't know,
right.
and so there's a disconnection between the motherland and our identity and how we maneuver in the world. Like if some of us knew our history enough to know that, oh, you come from this tribe and this is what your tribe was known for. You're a descendant of this king or this queen and this is what you were known for.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being ingrained into us in this American education system, that our education lesson starts from slavery on down.
Right.
And that's what's kind of engraved in our mindset. I think the re-education of us will be the first phase of our liberation to then go on this other path and journey that you've been able to go on and have the enlightenment that you've had. I don't know. What's your thoughts on
Oh,
that?
most definitely. The miseducation in this country of African people and people of African descent is immense. I mean, scholars for centuries have been writing about it. We're still writing about it. One of the injury areas that the organization that I was with in Cobra stated was our peoplehood. That's an area that has resources, has to be targeted. Who we are as a people. Are we Americans only, or are we, do we have a much greater affinity to our roots, our cultural roots? And a lot of the reason why we survived in this country was because of that cultural knowledge that was brought from the continent, or we wouldn't be here as a people today. The further we get away from that, the further our challenges are exacerbated, I believe. And so part of our healing, a great deal of our healing, has to be to understand who we are as African people. What's the African personality? What's the African spirit that's still within us? And how do you utilize that knowledge to manifest greatness? Because people who fail or who are divorced from the reality of who they are cannot uh, engage in the world in a clear manner that is totally for their benefit, because
Mm,
they are looking through someone else's eyes, so they're automatically going to work for someone else's benefit. If you look into someone else's
mm,
eyes, it's only until you can look at the world through an African lens, through an African centered view, can you truly understand how all of your actions affect your reality and the reality of your people for greatness. That's what I believe.
mm. I love that. That you should turn that into a poem or something. That was just beautiful. That was just beautiful.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Representation
Yeah.
matters. I um how has representation or the lack thereof shaped you?
Representation or reparations? Representation in what way?
The representation matters. Like, so the representation of us as descendants of Africans, as us as, you know, scholars, as Black people, like, you know, like when you step in a pure Eurocentric dichotomy and you don't see yourself represented. And I mean, we even talked about this earlier, I think, before we press record, about how, you know, these students that are coming up, they can't be what they can't see. Like I would never know that I could start a career doing what you do until I have now met you. So now that I've seen you, it there then changes my perception and the shape of how I see the world and how I can see myself, because I see it through you.
Right.
So all that to say, representation matters.
Sure.
How's representation or the lack thereof shaped you?
Well, early on, I was limited by, you know, what I saw in my community. You know, I'm a fourth generation entrepreneur on my mother's side, third generation on my father's side, but none of the businesses were passed down. They were in business, business failed, or they closed down. It wasn't passed down to the preceding generation. And so I saw entrepreneurship as a way to have a level of independence, but I didn't see it as something to build a tremendous future with, because all I saw was, you know, my parents working in their own business and their children working for them. I didn't see these corporate status, you know, where you could build a family corporation and have hundreds of employees, et cetera, et cetera. So initially, that was my view. I was never one that saw working a job as a path forward. My parents, you know, was like models of some level of independence. But when you're tied to your own job, it's still the same thing. When you're tied to your own business, it's still really the same thing, even though you have more independent, you have more say so on how your work day goes. But it's still the same thing. So that was limiting for me. But again, I grew up in a community where, you know, there was love and, you know, there was a lot of different people doing a lot of different things. And so I could look outside of my family, take as much inspiration as I could from my family, and then look outside my family as well. At the time here in Chicago, you had, when I grew up, you had this is in the 70s when Nixon began throwing money at blacks because he didn't want us rebelling. So he started this black capitalist movement. So he was, you know, putting money into black businesses. You had corporations being formed. You had business dealerships that were being formed. And I began to see black business from a different level. And so, you know, we had Johnson Products Company. We had, you know, Evans Potato Chips Company. We had Baldwin Ice Cream Company. These were national brands operating out of Chicago. None of those exist anymore. But these were national brands operating out of Chicago, and you were able to see and hear and view what some of these business giants were doing. And so that was tremendous inspiration, just seeing that. Our children here on the business level, our children in the community, they see foreigners owning everything. All the shops that, you know, you go to for hair products, for gas, for basic food products, for, you know, just all the little necessities that you need day to day, businesses mostly are owned by foreigners. Those businesses were owned by blacks after the 60s. After the rebellions in the 60s, blacks was owning all those businesses. They don't now. So our children don't see even business ownership as something that, you know, they should aspire to. And so we have to change that. A lot of them are engaged in internet businesses, which is great. Love that. So, you know, what we expose our children to and is, you know, as much as, in fact, greater than what actually we instill in their minds. because as far as education, because they can do in their minds, they can be as creative as they can with what they see and envision and do some things that, we never thought possible. Yeah, I would answer in that fashion.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about it because I grew up in Washington D.C. and yeah, it was like that too in D.C. You had like a lot of you know black mom and pop shops and businesses that I don't see there now, and so that really limits what our young people see. And even the ones that weren't up and running, like you go like across town to go get this special cream that Sister Mary Lynn would make, and she would sell out of her house that you can't get nowhere. But you would only go across town to spend money with that person to get that thing, right? In our own internal community, and or you go get um from Mr. Fred Hammond. He had these sausages that he would make that his grandfather taught him, and then you could only get it from there.
Right.
You go cross back town over there to get that instead of go to the store because it was it's almost like an underground like black market.
It was an informal economy
for us.
Yeah. We had an informal economy that was working.
Yeah,
that worked for us.
You only go there because you can only get it from there, and I think it ingrains something else into you that like that teaches you about business with your own to keep the dollar circulating between your fellow brother, which I think is kind of lost too.
Exactly.
Which we need to figure out how we get back to. I'm curious, how do you support your local Black community? Are there like any specific Black owned businesses where you like to shop, or is this something else that you kind of do with nonprofits, or what's it look like these days?
So I try to spend as much money as I can just in the community in our shops. I'm in the real estate field, so I sometimes do renovations often, especially if I turn over an apartment or something like that, or if I have a rehab project. I try to use all Black contractors, from the lawyers to the accountants, the real estate agent, the architects, of course, all the construction trades. I try to have that whole system look like us, because we spend the money with each other. At least those who I work with attempt to do that, and so that's one way that I can personally contribute to resources circulating in our community.
Nice. So now, there's a question I want to ask you. Now that we know a little bit about the business that you're into, and I think I want you to, give it from the answer when we go in this next section is mostly about your career, your experience, and so forth. But one thing, the question I usually like to start off is, what was your first job? Because often, sometimes young people, they think as soon as they get out of college or high school, whatever that career that they have on the horizon, they think, oh, now I've got the degree, and so that allows me the Noah thought is to go directly into that career and do that thing, right? And I'm like, no, everybody has some humble beginnings of where they started in life. Nobody starts at the beginning. Nobody starts at the middle or the end. Very rarely does that happen, right? But like somebody had a 9 to 5 working somewhere here or interning here before they got to where you see them at today. So what was Kamm's first job? I can't wait to hear what this answer is going to be.
Well, I kind of already told you. My first job was working in my family's business. I started doing toilets for about
doing toilets
for about 2 or 3 years. I was probably 8 or 9, and that was my job, to clean the toilets and sweep outside in front of the store, break down the boxes, That was my job for until I was moved up because I had older sisters who were doing other aspects of the business until I was moved up to a
Right.
stock boy. But I was the toilet
I,
aficionator.
I would have never guessed that. I would have never guessed you was a toilet man. I
And
thought they would
my
have had
mother,
you doing something.
yeah, my mother was a stickler, man. If I didn't get it right, I would have to do it over and do it over and do it over. And I just determined that, I wanted to play and I couldn't go play
Right.
unless I got that toilet right. So, man, I did my job very well.
Right. So yeah, I would have never guessed that. I
Yeah.
thought they'd had you like in sales, working the front room, cash
No,
register,
man.
something like.
No, man. That was it for me.
Oh man.
But,
Uh,
it taught me a lesson, man. No matter
right.
what the job is, do it correctly the first time. And develop a habit of doing things correctly. And you can then enjoy other stuff because I just wanted to get out and play. And I was not
Right.
getting out until I got that washroom, that bathroom correct.
Right. So now I'm curious. So because I know one part of your career is the real estate market, and another part of your career is doing the reparations. How did you get into both of these worlds, and how to it, like what steps would you say you took to get into your career in business and build it to what it is today?
So in the real estate business, I always had that desire. I had a great aunt who was made her money in the policy, which is today's
Mm-hmm.
lottery. Was a business for blacks, was an informal business. The government made it criminal, but it was an informal business where blacks, chose a number. They could bet on the number. And if that number came out in the paper or with the wheel that they would spin, they would win, you know, more money than what they put in. So it was a lottery, um, unofficially. She made a tremendous amount of money. She owned several businesses and a lot of property. When I was older and decided I wanted to get into real estate, I went to talk to her because she was probably probably 83, 84 at that time. So she wasn't actively doing anything. All of her income was passive and all of her income was tied. She was on fixed income. But her fixed income was not from a government check. Her fixed income was based on the number of apartments that she owned, free and clear. So her income was fixed according to, I think she had maybe 44, 45 apartments. She didn't have any mortgages on that. And every month she would get that amount less the whatever expenses. So her income was fixed at that level. And I said, I want that type of fixed income. And so that was my inspiration. I talked to her. She assisted me in purchasing my first property, which was a 4 flat. Uh, and I just started buying multi-family properties from that point on. But yeah, it was talking to someone who had tremendous success in the area that I wanted to go to, and then being mentored by that inspiration.
Do you feel that because you've had that success, it has allowed you to um, have the success and have the time to actually, also have a secondary career in reparations because you have this foundation that you don't that I mean, not that you don't have to worry about, you do have to worry about it, but it allows you a different type of fluidity in your life than
Yeah.
somebody who's working a regular 9 to 5.
Sure, business success allows you to engage in your passion, something that you desire,
Mm-hmm.
something that you feel is meaningful. Some people find it in a hobby. Some people find it in doing social work or committing to a particular social issue. And so that's what I did. If
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, didn't have some sort of success, it's not what it was when I joined the movement, unfortunately. But if I hadn't had some sort of success, I wouldn't have been able to join the movement. So it was the ability to have free time, which a business
Mm-hmm.
success allows you to do. Gives you time to do other things. And so I was probably working the first 10 days of the month and the last 10 days of the month. and
Mm-hmm.
not every month. Sometimes it'll be 8 days or 7 days in the front and in the back. And then I'd have this time in the middle, which was just really doing it, nothing. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
no demands as far as work. Still had my family and all that, but there was no work demands. And so that freed me up to actually engage the reparations movement.
Nice. What's one good lesson life has taught you?
Well, you have to find your mission and devote yourself
Mm-hmm.
to it. And if you devote yourself to it, there will be success. Your
Mm-hmm.
mission really determines what you contribute to the world. And that can be, just contribute to your family, building a strong family and, having a career or whatever to build that strong family. But you have to find that mission, man. And it will drive you. It will get you over challenges. It will, it will bring you a tremendous joy as you're,
Mm-hmm.
on your way to develop it and to achieve it. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people wander through life because they don't know what their mission is. And so take the time, look, read, go to experts, go find how you can really determine your mission. It gives you a laser-like focus on what path you're on. If you don't know,
Yeah.
what it is you're trying to achieve, then there's no path for you to follow to get there.
Yeah. Um, which you gave a perfect segue to my next question because the first part is a two-part. The first part is like, someone who is at that trajectory, and they're like in college or just graduating high school, and they're trying to figure it out, right? But they hear this interview with Kamm, and it's like, you know what? I think what Kamm is doing, that's what I want. I want that freedom. Like I'm inspired by that. I want to start a career in real estate so that I can have that freedom to also work on the passions that I'm passionate about. What's some advice you would give to someone who would like to start a career in your industry?
Well,
Would it be, hey, you can speak to both of them honestly, because I feel that maybe, I don't know if there's a job that they could do in the reparations industry, but like speak to both of those. How do they, start a career in either reparations or real estate that allows them to maneuver like you've been able to?
so a career in real estate, in both, it's about educating yourself. It could
Okay.
be either formally or informally. I've had formal and informal education in real estate. My first educator was my aunt, and I read books independently on it. After I was successful, I went back to school, got an MBA in real estate with a concentration in real estate, so I could do the even larger deals that I wanted to do. So education is key to whatever you want to do. When I was in the reparations, when I joined the reparations, I spent 2 years just educating myself on what had happened prior to me joining the movement, and then what has shaped the current stage of the movement that I was in. At the time, the movement was dying, or some people said it was dead. And so I joined the dead movement. Why was it dead? And how
Because
could
you
we?
wasn't there yet, Kamm. You had to come with
Right,
the outfit from Ghana to revive it.
right. How do you revive it? Right. So I spent 2 years just trying to understand what led to this point and what was out there that some people weren't seeing that we could latch onto. And so that allowed me to kept me focused and kept me in the movement when a lot of people had dropped out. So the first thing is education. If you want to invest in real estate, there's three things you have to have. One is 2 years of employment. So you want to get a job. If you don't, or if you're working for yourself, have your own business, you need 2 years of tax returns. That's basic, because you have to be able to show that you have a ability to pay the mortgage. If it's a income property, they also look at the income from the property, but you also have to show that you have ability. The second thing is that you have to have a credit standing. You have to build credit into a certain level, which shows that you have not only the ability to pay, but you have a willingness to pay. You have a track record of paying your bills. And that's what lenders look at in real estate, is that you will pay. You have a track record of paying, and the credit system, credit scoring system, is a way that demonstrates that you have the ability to pay. So you need 2 years of employment, you need a credit report or credit standing, and you need a down payment. So you have to learn how to save your money. Once you have those three, then from your education, you know what properties or you want, or what aspect of the industry you want to invest in, and then you go for it. But those are the three main things that you have to prepare for if you want to be in the business. But education is constant in this business, and in the industry, education is constant.
Yeah. Now, on the flip side of that, what would you say to somebody who's been in a dead end job? They're in their mid 30s. They've been in this dead end job, and they come across your interview and it's like, you know what, this is what I want to do. I'm gonna do this. What's some advice you would give to them? Would it be the same advice that you just gave?
It would be the same advice. Real estate is a way to build wealth, and there's a way also to generate income. So you have to determine, there's a lot of real estate gurus out here, and who offer classes and seminars. They're very expensive. Some of them are very expensive. I would go to the free ones, as many free ones as I can, and before jumping out there. And there's a lot of education out there on real estate and how to invest in real estate. So it is something that can free you from that dead end job, and prepare you for generational wealth.
Nice. I love that. I love that. So when you think of the industries you're in as a whole, like the future of the reparations industry and the future of real estate, what does those two industries look like, especially for people like us? Because it looks like this could be a pathway that anybody who's interested in could take a journey down to basically start to build the foundational building blocks for what we would like to see for our people in the future, at least.
So in real estate, of course, I'd like to see us owning our community. And owning our communities does not just mean owning the houses. Owning the houses just mean you own the living space. But there's business space in the community. There's industry space in the community, and there's office space in the community. And we're not owning those. We're not owning all the strip malls, and we're not owning the apartment buildings where people can't buy their houses. We're not owning those. We're not owning the light industry that's in our community. Those things we have to also own for us to actually own our community. So I'd like to see a lot more investing of us pulling our money together to own these shops where the foreigners have to pay you rent to operate, their shops, where they're taking the resources all the way back across the cities. And so there's a lot of work around getting more Black banks resources from some of these larger banks, and they should be investing in those of us who want to actually own our communities by owning these other aspects of housing and real estate. And so that's really where I'd like to see we target our efforts in the real estate industry of actually owning our communities. In the reparations movement, there are a lot of foundations putting money into the movement right now. So there are quite a few jobs in the reparations movement if someone is interested because of this new money that's coming in. There's, you can find an area of the reparations movement that you're interested in. If it's local reparations, then, definitely you want to do that. It's join an organization that's doing some work already in the movement, and possibly there's a career opportunity there. I know that there's been probably 20 organizations started in the last 2 years that have gotten grants for reparations work. And so that's going to just expand phenomenally, and it's expanding. There is opportunity in the reparations movement also.
Yeah. So I love that. Love that. All right, so let's wrap up like this because I feel like me and you could talk for hours, but I don't do the Joe Rogan type of interviews. uh, what projects are you currently working on, and where can people find you?
So right now I'm on a national tour called it's a Reparations Unity tour called The Mission, the Mandate, the Method, where I attempt to unify the reparations movement with this particular presentation. The mission, of course, is as I stated earlier, it is the federal redress bill through an executive order, getting Joe Biden to sign this bill and create this commission. The mandate is that the commission must create a master plan of redress for Black America in all these different areas that I talked about: economics, criminal justice, health, um, housing, and other areas, proposals that address all of these areas. That's the mandate of the commission, a master plan of redress for 400 years of crimes and its continued impact on our people. And then the mission, the method is the only way we're going to get to establish the mission so that the commission can be established is through unity. There's a lot of disunity in the movement right now, and I have a view on how we can move forward with the mission without having to be totally in sync on every issue, totally in sync on ideology or method, but that if we adhere to what I'm suggesting, we can hold on to our differences and achieve our mission. And so that's what I'm working on now. I can be reached at reparationsunited.org. That's our website, but Kamm at reparationsunited.org is how I can be reached personally. Go to our website. You can see what some of our tour locations will be, where we've been already. And we've had some success on the tour, and we're looking for even greater success on this mission, mandate, and method that we're on.
You coming out to California anytime soon?
Man, I was there I was there. I was in Oakland. I was in San Diego.
Oh,
brother,
man.
But I'm coming back. We're probably going to be back. We were at the in San Diego, the Sister Center. Oh man, what's the name of the center? It slips me. But
was it in Balboa Park?
Huh?
The African Center? Was it the African Cultural Center?
It's the African Cultural Center, but I can't think of the name of it. What did you say at First Park? She's been there like 40 years.
I can't think of.
But anyway, it was a beautiful experience there.
All right. So now that you on my radar,
okay,
let's not. When you come back to California, especially San Diego, please let's link up.
For sure, brother. For sure. I'll definitely get you that information as soon as we determine when we're coming back. But we will be back. We may be back toward the end of this month because we just got an invitation, but we haven't put a date down yet. So, but we'll definitely be back.
Okay, sounds good. Ladies and gentlemen, you have now tuned into the greatest. Kamm Howard, the Reparations movement. Make sure y'all check this brother out. Kamm, any last words of wisdom for the people before we sign out?
Man, we have to stay focused. We are winning, and we can win. We're determined to win. That's it. We're
there you go.
To win.
I think Kamm was a poet in his last life. He's been dropping some lines today. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll catch you all the next time.
Peace out.